It's Monday, January 23. In the headlines, the Finance Minister to give an update on changes to FSC. Regionally, CDB announces funds to address regional transportation. Internationally, Britain's Prime Minister facing strikes and scandals. And in sports, Windies women lose to South Africa. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Investigators probing a major fraud scheme at Stocks and Securities Limited are set to question senior directors of the institution. It's understood that the directors will be questioned about the financial operation of the entity, including concerns raised by the Financial Services Commission about SSL in 2016. SSL was placed under the temporary management of the FSC last week after a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme was uncovered at the investment firm. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark says in a statement that Everton McFarlane, the Executive Director of the Financial Services Commission, FSC, has resigned effective January 31. Dr. Clark informed that Mr. McFarlane was to depart on leave on Friday, January 20, and the Bank of Jamaica's Chief Prudential Officer, Major Karen Burrell, will be seconded to the FSC to assume the role of Interim Executive Director. The Minister of Finance is also expected to announce changes to the FSC board today. On Friday, investigators from the Financial Investigation Division and Fraud Squad raided 2 properties occupied by a suspect, seizing documents, phones, and electronic devices. Prime Minister Andrew Holness and Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark have promised full transparency in the investigations. Sprint legend Usain Bolt is among at least 40 investors hit by the fraud, which is being investigated by the Police Fraud Squad and FID and the FSC. Bolt's attorney, Linton Gordon, in his January 16 letter to SSL, had pointed out that the Olympian had established an account with SSL via a limited liability company, essentially for his pension. The attorney stated that on October 31, 2022, the account showed a balance of $12.7 million. However, on the date when he wrote the letter, Gordon said the account had been depleted to just $12,000. SSL has been given 10 days starting January 16 to return the funds. The National Solid Waste Management Authority, NSWMA, plans to embark on a major waste disposal initiative in Kingston. The initiative, called Clean Kingston, is being undertaken in collaboration with the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation and will entail a special day for intense cleanup activities. The aim of the program is to improve the environment and promote civic duty. It is also part of the NSWMA's Clean City program, which was designed to target the backlog of garbage in town centers and business districts. It's time now for the second episode of PBCJ's monthly feature, Community Heroes. This month, we feature the manager of the Sunbeam Boys Home, Mr. Desmond Whiteley. Mr. Whiteley has been working with the vulnerable members of the society for decades. And on our last visit to the institution, he humbly chose to tell us more about the home, what it needs, than anything about his personal achievements. Manager of the Sunbeam Boys Home, Mr. Desmond Whiteley, says the home, which is located in Spring Village, St. Catherine, needs your help. It's been around for over 40 years. The manager says while they do get a subsidy from the government, it's not enough for the daily demand of taking care of the boys.
We have what is called an off-site transitional program. Transitional means that some of the boys are either at college or they're over 18. Now, if they're over 18, they are not normally residents. Yes, so, 18, you're an adult. So we either place them with family or we are hoping to place them in the transitional home. The transitional home is a new project that Sunbeam we have coming on stream, and that should be ready in September. The need for that is a lot of these boys do not have families that they can go back home to. And also because you get them late. For example, you get a boy that is 16, and at 16, he's not able to read. You're going to need a little bit more time, more than 3 years, to integrate him a little bit more, to get him an education or a skill so that he can go and make something productive of himself. So the transitional program is very important, and in the transitional program, they can stay there up till 21. We are a faith-based institution, and I really want to say that we walk by faith. A lot of the expenditures that we do is as a result of the gifts that we receive. I want to make an appeal, and the appeal is this: that it is easier to build boys than to break men. I think the society has gotten it a little wrong. What we are trying to do is to break men. That is impossible because it's a social problem. What we must do is to invest in the young men. Why are they in institutions? They are in institutions because a lack of fathers. It's a fatherlessness problem, yes? And fatherlessness is a massive problem in the society. If you look at school dropouts, if you look at incarceration, if you look at homicides, it can all be traced to the homes. Who is in the homes? The mothers. So we are filling that gap. We are becoming the fathers to the nation. And so we need the support. The support is necessary for growing boys. If we can't grow boys, we will not have men. We are online Facebook. We are on Facebook. The number is 708-5375. We'll give you the account number. And listen, we are asking persons just to, get in touch with us, see how they can assist as we make the appeal. Maybe just to sponsor a boy. We have a program that we want to launch. It's called the I Can Initiative. I Can Initiative. And what we are asking people to do is every time you go to the supermarket, buy 1 can extra of food and bring it to Sunbeam. I can help feed Sunbeam boys.
Mr. White says the home often faces a great challenge around back-to-school time.
Each boy needs a pair of shoes. It costs $7,000 each. They all need about 3 or 4 pairs of uniform. It is very expensive. As I said earlier, we have to walk by faith. Yes? So maybe you can sponsor a child. Maybe, whatever resources you have available.
He explains that most of the boys who are taken in are often in need of specialized educational programs first.
One of the challenges of managing a state home or a home that like ours is that a lot of the children coming in, a lot of the boys are slow. They were not paying attention in school or they were misbehaving. Hence, their education is behind. And so we have to have a remedial program and a special education program because some of the children have, special needs. And so what we do is that we parallel their day school with an after-school support. It's called after-school advantage. Now, we never have all the resources, but it has to be done. Okay, so we do have a teacher on staff and we have volunteers who come in from time to time to assist the boys with that aspect of their education. Because education, we feel, is the equalizer. If you can educate a person, then you can keep him out of prison.
Despite the challenges over the years, the institution has been quietly changing the lives of some of the most vulnerable and abused children in St. Catherine.
Over the last 5 years, 3 boys have graduated from tertiary institution. 2 did actuarial science at the University of the West Indies. They came from Sunbeam. As I speak to you, 1 boy is now in university and several others are doing well academically.
Do the right thing and support this community hero in his efforts to serve his people and build a better Jamaica. Now, let's get back to business. Cygnus Group wants to double its portfolio. Danita Rodney has this story plus your usual market update in the business report.
Speaking at their annual general meeting last week, Executive Vice President and Chief Investment Officer of Cygnus Group, Jason Morris, says the company is looking to nearly double its portfolio within the next 3 years.
In terms of SCI's growth path, we're really and truly focusing on a go-forward basis, because we spent the first 5 years setting the base, and now we're focusing on, we really need to start ramp up shareholder value substantially more than we have done in the past. So the first one is in terms of core revenues, to grow that by more than 50% from where we ended the last financial year, to be in excess of 12.5 million. So this is not to say that the target is 12.5 million US. That's the minimum threshold. So if we get to 15, 18, that's good. But the target is not 12 million, it's to be a minimum of. So with the strategies, within 3 years we need to do these things, which is similar to, I think, 2.5 years ago when we said within 12 to 24 months we needed to do some things. Second one is ROE. So in steady state, which means when we get to the end of the 3-year period, or prior to the end of the 3-year period on a go-forward basis, we need to generate an ROE of greater than 10%. Again, 10% isn't the target. We're saying the minimum should be 10%. The third thing is EPS, to grow the earnings per share by at least 75% from where we ended the last financial year.
Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Friday, January 20, the US dollar sold for an average of $154.96. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $114.89. The pound sterling traded for $188.49, and the euro sold for $170. In GSE trading, the GSE index declined by 214 points. The junior market index advanced by 30 points. The combined market index advanced by 79 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 921 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 104 stocks, of which 40 advanced, 47 declined, and 17 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Access Financial Services Limited, and Blue Power Group Limited. Stocks declined for AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, Barita Investments Limited, and Berger Paints Jamaica Limited. Trading firm were 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Variable Preference, CAC 2000 Limited, and Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited. The overall volume leaders were Image Plus Consultants Limited with over 12 million units, Wigton Wind Farm Limited Ordinary Shares with over 3 million units, and Express Catering Limited with over 1 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund was the volume leader with 1 share. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Epley Caribbean Property Fund Value Fund was the volume leader with 40,000 shares. They were followed by Goddard Enterprises Limited, which traded over 9,000 shares. In regional business, Barbados is expected to gain millions of dollars in direct and indirect revenue when it hosts the 41st Caribbean Travel Marketplace later this year. The announcement was made during a virtual meeting Sunday afternoon. Tourism Minister Ian Goodin-Hedgeshill welcomed the news.
I have been informed that the most recent Caribbean Travel Marketplace, which was held in 2022 in Puerto Rico, garnered 78 million impressions and had a US $3 million public relations value. It is anticipated that the hosting of Marketplace will provide a platform to showcase Barbados to key sellers worldwide, which is often accompanied by an organic increase in sales, as well as the unmatched opportunity for the industry to reunite at this highly awaited event. Undoubtedly, hosting the 41st Caribbean Travel Marketplace will provide the opportunity for the world to see Barbados, what it has to offer, its uniqueness, and how the island is diversifying its tourism product for the post-pandemic era.
In market data for oil prices rose by 1%, extending last week's gain on the back of a stronger outlook due to an expected economic recovery in top oil importer China. Brent crude was up 88 cents to $88.51, and West Texas Intermediate crude rose 76 cents to $82.40 a barrel. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news out of Grenada, responding to the requests of Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell and other Caribbean leaders for an amicable solution to concerns in the declining regional air travel, the Caribbean Development Bank announced it has funded a consultancy to address the Eastern Caribbean air transport crisis. GBN News has the details.
In July last year, 1 month after taking up office, Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell gave his commitment to a timeline of December 31st, 2022 to put forward a proposal to the region outlining the way forward for regional travel.
I'm happy to indicate that, in fact, while in St. Lucia last Friday, OECS heads would have had a caucus, and we recommitted to redoubling our efforts to addressing the issue of regional air transportation. We have a follow-up call with the Caribbean Development Bank for the 2nd of August. And so we really are hoping that by the end of the year, we can come to our citizens with concrete proposals as to how we intend to address this issue.
According to a release from the Caribbean Development Bank, Prime Minister Mitchell and other heads of government from Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Guyana, St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines reached out to the bank for assistance to examine and address airlift capacity challenges. Responding to their requests, the CDB Board of Directors approved a technical assistance grant to the tune of US $350,000 to go towards developing interim arrangements to address the crisis. The CDB will finance consultancy services, which will devise urgent provisional measures to re-establish regular air transport services within the sub-region. President of the CDB, Dr. Hyginus Jean Leon, said the CDB has embarked on decisive and integrated action to address the recent reduction in air transportation.
To safeguard the region's future, governments need to take decisive and integrated action to reform the air transportation operating environment. These measures should include: 1, rationalizing the regulatory environment and addressing factors that contribute to the high cost of travel.
The void in regional air connectivity has emerged because of the collapse of LIAT, the main intra-island air carrier in the Eastern Caribbean in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, and its subsequently severe curtailment of services. Currently, LIAT operates 50 flights a week, 90% down from almost 500 flights weekly prior to its demise. The significantly reduced airlift capacity has hindered the movement of goods, services, and people, to the disadvantage of tourism, trade, employment, business activity, and social relations. The president also pointed out another unnecessary issue with regional air travel, which requires residents from some Caribbean islands to travel to the United States in order to access other Caribbean countries.
We have a crisis, especially in parts of the region, where you cannot move from one country to the other without necessarily getting a visa to go through the U.S. as a connecting point. So a young kid or young adult, 20, 22 years, looking to move from one country to the next, has to get approval of a visa to enter through the United States, even if there is no business in the United States.
The technical assistance grant was approved by the CDB board at a meeting on December 9th, 2022. Reporting for GBN News, Beverly Telesford.
The Barbados Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition believes it is now critical to address the health crisis facing Barbados' children with the implementation of school nutrition policy to curb the level of obesity and other non-communicable diseases.
One of the things that the Barbados Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition is advocating for would be full implementation. We want to know that it is not only implemented, but it is well monitored and tracked so that the necessary results from such a policy, that we are able to tell if we are seeing those, if we need to make changes, things like that. We are offering support. What we need is for the vendors and the canteen concessionaires to accept that support. We are going to be doing workshops as the year progresses, and so we want persons to stay tuned to the Heart and Stroke Foundation Barbados Facebook and Instagram pages so that they can see when these workshops are, being advertised. We are also hoping that the Ministry of Education, because we're working very closely with them, that they will make the information more readily available to the vendors. So getting it out there so that people actually are participating. Because like I said, we want them to be successful in their business. But at the heart of our mission is to protect our children.
In the Bahamas, following the surge in COVID-19 cases, officials are considering if free COVID-19 testing sites should be reopened. Our News has that report.
There's been a surge in COVID-19 cases in other parts of the world as health officials report the emergence of a new COVID strain called XBB.1.5. While the new variant hasn't been detected in the Bahamas, Bahamians are still advised to be cautious. Darville explains that the COVID situation in the Bahamas remains fluid.
I've always said that the incidence of COVID in the Bahamas is very fluid. We have a very robust tourism sector, and sometimes we have the potential of importing cases. We have Bahamians who travel into areas where the incidence of COVID is a bit higher than the Bahamas, and they come back home. And so our job is to monitor and make those decisions when we think they are appropriate. At this particular time, we believe the accessibility of COVID testing at the South Beach Clinic, the accessibility of COVID testing at our tertiary facility exists, and we will continually monitor the situation.
In international news, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has only been in office for 3 months, but is already facing economic problems, worker strikes, and new allegations of misbehavior by politicians and MPs. Al Jazeera Paul Rees reports.
Now, I'm out and about seeing levelling up in action all across the country today.
Getting fined for not wearing a seatbelt in this Instagram video was hardly the look that Rishi Sunak was going for this week. He was trying to show he could lead Britain out of the gloom and scandals of recent years.
Now, you can follow my progress.
Progress has been hard to come by for the man who became Prime Minister in October, and the controversy that dogged his predecessors hard to shake off. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson was the latest to send Sunak's attempted fresh start crashing off course on Sunday. While Johnson was in Ukraine, reports in the British media accused him of failing to declare that a man he appointed as chairman of the BBC had previously helped him secure a loan of nearly $1 million. Big deal, said Johnson's spokesman. But that is what the trickle of sleaze is becoming for Britain's ruling party, 6 months after Johnson was forced from office for one scandal too many. The day before, their chairman Nadeem Zahawi apologised for a careless error, having been reportedly forced to pay $6 million to UK tax authorities in a dispute over his finances. He had previously denied he was trying to avoid paying tax. Extra embarrassing for his party and the government, as he was finance minister during the dispute. In a statement, Zahawi said, HM Revenue and Customs concluded that this was a careless and not deliberate error. So that I could focus on my life as a public servant, I chose to settle the matter and pay what they said was due.
What we do know is that Nadeem brought his tax affairs up to date, and we do know that the tax bill existed because he had launched and grown and run a very, very successful business. Bearing in mind, of course, he came here as a refugee fleeing conflict and persecution, speaking almost no English at all.
The big sums at play in the Johnson and Zahawi cases will hardly help the government's position, as it holds out on new pay deals for nurses, ambulance workers, teachers and train drivers. One of the things Rishi Sunak had going for him when he took over as Prime Minister was that he wasn't badly tarnished by the scandals of the Boris Johnson era, despite getting a police fine for attending Johnson's birthday party during lockdown. But as the Conservative Party continues its decades-long dance with controversy, that fresh start is increasingly looking like a false one. Paul Rees, Al Jazeera, London.
On Sunday, January 2022, Ukraine marked Unity Day. It's a day when two territories run by Ukrainians agreed to unify back in 1919. This year's observance of the day was somewhat subdued due to security concerns, but the nation is showing renewed unity in its fight against Russia's invasion. Al Jazeera reports.
Sweeping landscapes and picturesque views of Ukraine before the war, as President Volodymyr Zelensky gave a special video address for Unity Day, commemorating modern Ukraine's formation more than a century ago.
Across Ukraine, in the summer, in the autumn, in the winter, we are defending all this together, and we will win together, and the entire Ukraine will hear the sounds of victory.
Since Russia invaded, Ukrainians have come together to defend their country. For some, Unity Day is a fitting symbol for a shared experience.
It's our independence and autonomy that unite us. For me, this day means we are together and defending our values with our lives.
Kyiv's Paton Bridge spans the Dnipro River. It's usually at the centre of the city's Unity Day celebrations, but officials are worried about security. Traditionally, on Unity Day, people would form a human chain across this bridge, but Ukrainian officials have cancelled the event this year because of the war. To mark the day, former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson made a surprise visit to Ukraine. He met President Zelensky and visited the town of Bucha on the capital's outskirts. Hundreds of people were killed in Bucha under Russian occupation in March last year.
Well, I can tell you that the UK will be sticking by Ukraine for as long as it takes.
Великобританія буде на боці України, скільки на це потребується часу.
You are going to win, and you're going to get all the Russians out of your country, but we will be there for the long term.
Johnson's visit comes as Western powers have promised more weapons for Kyiv, and pressure continues to build on Germany to allow its Leopard tanks to be sent to Ukraine. Kyiv says it needs all the firepower it can get to defend itself. Most people here agree. For nearly a year now, Ukrainians have shown what unity can look like and how powerful it can be. Natasha Butler, Al Jazeera, Kyiv.
In sports, the West Indies women once again failed to deliver with the bat as they went down by 44 runs to South Africa in the first match of the Tri-Series that also features India.
The host, South Africa, won the toss and elected to bat first, with Marizanne Kapp top scoring with 52. That included 5 fours. Kapp was helped by her captains Soon Loose, who scored 30, and Laura Woolvart, who had a knock of 25 to carry them to a score 141 for 5 from their 20 overs. Shamilia Cornell had the best bowling figures for the West Indies with 2 wickets for 17 runs from 3 overs. Prior to the game, Windies head coach Courtney Walsh spoke of the importance of the team focusing on its batting. That message was not carried over as the tourists were limited to 97 for 8 from their 20 overs, with only captain Hayley Matthews once again getting amongst the runs with a knock of 23. Player of the match, Masabata Class, did the damage with the ball for South Africa, taking 4 wickets for 21 runs to hand her team a 44-run victory.
Justice Patrick Thompson Jr., chairman of the 3-member committee put together by Cricket West Indies to review the West Indies World T20 performance in 2022, has encouraged structured and honest conversation between Guyanese batsman Shimron Hetmyer and the regional governing board.
Brandon, I'm sure you'd appreciate that I'm not in a position to see what will be the outcome of those discussions. But certainly we believe, and it's also something you will see in the full report, we believe that Cricket West Indies ought to encourage ongoing dialogue with Mr. Hetmyer as to the role that they would like him to play in their operations going forward. What happens, of course, is a matter for Cricket West Indies and its directors and its cricket people, and of course, its incoming president in the fullness of time. But certainly for our part, as part of our review, we felt that there ought to at least be some conversation and a structured and honest conversation with Mr. Hetmyer and with Cricket West Indies, with honesty on both sides, so that we can chart a way forward with him. What happens as a result is an open.
That's the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thank you so much for watching, and do remember, we are the People's Station.